Thank you all for your service. Now, people have been saying this exact phrase to me for the past 13 years. Back when I was young, dumb, and impressionable, I answered America's call for patriotic duty, and I joined the US Army to go to the Middle East and destroy the so-called terrorist threat. I joined for a 5-year enlistment, and I ended up doing a 15-month combat occupation tour in Iraq. Various places were Mosul, Baghdad, and Baquba, which ended up being the most bloody of all. And during my time in the military, I was a gung-ho, W. Bush-supporting, hardcore Republican who happened to also be the first person in their family to be born in the United States and not in Mexico. But there I was, a person of color, fulfilling my duty to my country, all because I had discovered AM talk radio by accident. Now, before joining the military in 2004, I was working for Coca-Cola. I would drive to different Walmarts and Targets, and I restocked their shelves with different Coke products. Now, after one long day of hard work, I was driving home, and while I waited to turn left into my driveway, I was rear-ended by a van coming down the hill full speed. Now, I was banged up some, but because capitalism never lets up, I was forced to keep working. I needed to pay rent and take care of my kids. Unfortunately, my dad let me borrow his old car, a 1984 Chevy. So there I was, spending the next few months driving around 10 to 12 hours a day with only an AM radio in my car. I was listening to the likes of Sean Hannity, Bill O'Reilly, even Michael Savage. I became brainwashed into this far-right ideology, and I felt the call for patriotic duty and to serve in combat. Now, thank you for your service. Now, why exactly am I thanking you all for your service? And why does everyone thank me for my service when they find out I'm a veteran? Is it just an awkward response or greeting? Or do they not just know what else to say? Now, let's just really try and think about that statement for a while. What exactly am I being thanked for? Is it for leaving my 2 kids behind for over a year? Or is it for going to another country as a person of color to go kill and harm other people of color simply because they exist? Because that's exactly how that phrase comes off to me. And to make matters worse, people also have had the audacity to ask me if I've ever killed anyone. And with that question, I would answer, yes, I did. I killed my own humanity. Now, the one pivotal moment for me was during a mission in Baquba in 2007. I was assigned as the gunner of my vehicle known as a Striker. It's basically a tank on wheels. It has mounted machine guns and a wire-guided missile launcher on the top, which I controlled. We were out on patrol one day, and we began to get shot at. By then, this was a normal occurrence. My vehicle and crew was to provide security at a certain block while ground units went in and kicked in doors. Now, part of the missile system is the powerful scope that I use and I'm able to see up to 2,500 meters away. Now, over the company radio, word came that some men with AK-47s were entering a certain courtyard and building. And I was ordered by my company commander to move to said building and to take fire position and to take out this building with some missiles. Now, obediently, I moved us into firing position. I used my optics to target the building, and at almost 2,500 meters, I noticed this courtyard was an active elementary school. I could see that children and teachers were outside laughing and playing, as they normally do. And I was there, and I was ordered to destroy it. I confirmed over the radio with my commander with the proposed target. Roger that, I replied, meaning I understand. I began to say to myself, this is effed up. I can't do this. And without giving myself any more chance to change my mind, I called back up on the radio, and I said, I don't have a clear shot. Roger that. And they ended up just sending in ground forces instead. And to make matters worse, no one was ever found with any weapons. Now, there were other moments in that tour where I didn't lie, and I went along with what I was ordered to do. And with that, I will have to live with those actions for the rest of my life. But I can at least say for that one moment, I restored my own humanity. I told a big lie that day, but it's also the day I knew I'd been lied to by everyone who had led me to Iraq in the first place. My recruiters lied, my platoon leaders lied, my talk radio heroes lied, and my president lied. I had had ethical questions in my head, but I didn't dare ask them out loud until I was no longer tied to any government contract. I pushed those questions back deep inside my mind, and I made excuses for US policy and its officials. In those long 15 months of heavy combat in Iraq, I began to question, not aloud, just in my head, why are we here? I saw that our presence was not bringing the freedom and democracy to all the Iraqi people that I was told we were, but instead we were removing it with no hope of any reconstruction. It was now 2009 in Tacoma, Washington, and I was out of the Army. Across the street from the Army base that I served on was a small coffee house called Coffee Strong. It was a play on words at the time of the Army motto called Army Strong. Now, when walking up to it, I saw signs that said that they give free coffee to soldiers and vets, and they also had free Wi-Fi. So naturally, I walked in and I noticed that this wasn't any regular coffee house. I noticed inside anarchist flags. I noticed literature on how to become a conscientious objector, and literature on anti-war rallies. But it turns out Coffee Strong was started as a college project by military veterans. It was a nonprofit that gave resources to vets, families, soldiers. And I put up with their hippie politics, as I called it, for the free coffee and the Wi-Fi. I had to, I was poor. But the more times I went in, the more I overheard conversations on experiences similar to my own. I explored their lending library, and I was suggested to read several books, which I did. I even ended my long boycott of watching the movie Fahrenheit 9/11. My mind began to fire on all its cylinders, and I really started to question everything I'd ever been taught and programmed to believe in. As I began to search for all the answers, I stumbled across an organization called Iraq Veterans Against the War, or IVAW for short. I signed up online and I became a member. The next day, I was contacted by the local chapter leader, and he told me they have their local weekly meetings at Coffee Strong. So I became hooked, and I stayed in Tacoma for the next 3 years. I volunteered first at Coffee Strong as just a barista. Then I became the events coordinator. I was asked to be on their board of directors. And in 2011, I was even hired on as their executive director. In that same year, I was also elected to the National Board of Directors for Iraq Veterans Against the War. In Iraq Veterans Against the War, we created and worked on various campaigns to try and end the occupations in Iraq and Afghanistan. But ultimately, our campaigns didn't work, and the wars continued. The US occupation of Vietnam did not end because of protests and rallies, though they did raise awareness and consciousness. But what actually worked was that the soldiers, a lot of them people of color, just stopped fighting. They were forced into the service through the draft, and they stopped fighting. Thousands dead, no end in sight. The soldiers began to take control themselves. Imagine that. The soldiers just stopped fighting. No soldiers, no wars. Now you might argue, but Jorge, there was a service draft going on. It was a different time. You're right, there was a service draft, and there isn't one today. But there is, in effect, a poverty draft today. Like the new Jim Crow, capitalism has created economic despair so crippling for all people, more so for people of color, that they become imprisoned in poorly financed neighborhoods, some with mobile police stations set up at their streets 24/7, and they are conditioned that the only way out of this forced poverty is to join military service. Much in the same manner that when people of color are faced with prison time, the court can give them the option to join the military service. People are also deceived into thinking that if they join the US military, that they will gain US citizenship. Instead, they will just go to war and be deported. We all need to remember that the US has a long history of using the poor people of this country to go kill the poor people of color of other countries, simply for profit. It is their blood for your oil. The US wars and occupations are not about establishing so-called democracy. It is for establishing the basis of an economic occupation after the military one is over, by taking control of its natural resources and its working force. Military recruiters even hang shiny red apples in front of you by suggesting that you will travel the world, have a steady paycheck, or have money for college. And all it will cost you is just a few years of your life. But what they conveniently leave out is that you might just end up paying with your mind, body, and life. They leave out that 1 in 3 women in the military will be sexually assaulted by their peers, superiors, and will be left with no recourse for any action. Now, I'm sure most of this crowd has heard of the school to prison pipeline, but I like to also talk about the school to military pipeline and how we can put a cork on that pipeline. We must throw a wrench into the military-industrial complex and bring an end to military recruiters setting foot in our kids' high schools to prey upon their impressionable minds. Military recruiters have always strategically targeted youth of color in low economic neighborhoods in its high schools. And some of these high schools even have training cults called the JROTC program. These recruiters groom our kids by taking them out for meals, shopping excursions, all in the hope that they will put their ex on their contract and sign their life over to Uncle Sam. It's quite simple. If you are a person of color, do not join the military. If you are a person of color and you have kids, do not present the idea of any military service to them. Teach them that the harm that the American empire has brought upon all occupied lands, colonies, and its occupations. Explain that there are many ways to gain a college education without the aid of military service or be in debt thousands of dollars to Sallie Mae. Organizations like IVAW, now rebranded as About Face, Veterans Against the War, can help lead young folks to a life without military. Now, as people of color, we have a commitment to each and every person of color from these illegal occupations that have been done in the name of freedom and liberty to all. Some have forgotten the promises we made to ourselves of unity and solidarity in exchange for security and profit. People of color in this country were once considered legal property. Do not repeat the history by becoming legal property of the state that uses the poor people of color of this country to fill its prisons for profit, to fill its military for profit. Do not simply vote Democrat because they opposed the wars at one time. People of color will not succeed from a political revolution. What we need is a social revolution. Imagine a world with no need for military, a world with free education and healthcare for all. Another world is extremely possible. As people of color, we must all form a united front against the imperialistic demands that are manipulated onto us by the many arms of oppression. Now, not just a Black united front, not just a Latino united front, Muslim, Asian, Indigenous, but all people of color must form a united front. There is no need to join the military to fight abroad when there are evils here in the United States, more commonly known to us as the legislative, executive, and judicial branches of the government. So, I ask that we all become active in organizations that promote social revolution and that work to rid our schools of military indoctrination. As people of color, we must declare a firm no to military service of any kind. And thank you for listening to me, and thank you all for your non-military service.